Very excited to welcome our first contributed talk in today's opening water plenary session by Jake Nelson, who's been doing a lot of interesting work on partitioning ET fluxes to evaporation and transpiration. And he's going to update us on trends and developments in water flux partitioning at the ecosystem scale. Take it away, Jake.
Hi, everyone. So yeah, I'm Jake Nelson at the Max Planck Institute for Biogeochemistry here in Vienna, Germany. And this will be a very surface level kind of frantic look at water flux partitioning at ecosystem scale. So what I mean by kind of water flux partitioning at ecosystem scale, kind of building off of what Rafa just was talking about, we're really talking about from the total, say, evapotranspiration of this total ecological water flux. You want to separate what are the components, such as the transpiration components, so the water flux that's going from the root zone moisture through plant tissues into the atmosphere, which is important for aggregating nutrients into plants, and also is biologically modulated. And in contrast to the biologically controlled flux, you have the abiotic evaporation, such as evaporation from the soil or intercepted from surfaces. So really to separate what is this biological component with what is this abiotic component. And Rafa already showed some of these numbers, but if we look globally, it's generally estimated that most of the water, terrestrial water flux, is going through plants. So it's really a major flux and an important flux. And transpiration in particular, I think is really important kind of in the greater Earth system. I mean, it's the nexus between water and carbon for terrestrial ecosystems, because both water and carbon are going through the stomates. It's accessing deeper water resources. And so it's influencing soil hydrology. Also, how plants are using water is influencing the downstream water and what water is available for plant and for human use, and also atmospheric feedback. So it's really a central process in the Earth system. And in that, given that it's such a central process, we would assume we have a good kind of concept of how this works. But if we look back at this 64% transpiration number that comes from a study from Good et al. It's a single snapshot based on isotopes, and there's quite a bit of uncertainty around that. Although I think it's a pretty good number and pretty well accepted to be around the 60–70% range. But if we want something more spatially or temporally explicit, we might go to, say, some process models. So here's a plot of the T over ET, the terrestrial transpiration to evapotranspiration in CMIP5 models. And so each dot is a model, and the diamond is the ensemble mean. And you see right away that they no longer are agreeing that transpiration is the dominant flux, at least on the ensemble mean. And there's a big spread from 20% to 60% across the models. And this is the last generation CMIP5. Maybe they fixed it in CMIP6, I'm not sure. But maybe it shows we don't understand this process of transpiration on broad scales, at least as well as we would hope. And looking into where we understand it, we're really understanding transpiration from a plant level. So really in depth laboratory studies, field campaigns, measurements of individual plants, such as with sap flow. And we're taking this knowledge that we understand at the plant level, how plants respond, and we're applying that to global and regional processes. And so in a process model, this would be then codified. Here's the equation for stomatal conductance. So how stomates respond to VPD or atmospheric CO2. And we scale that somehow to regional and global levels. But what's probably missing here, which is very relevant for Ameriflux, is the ecosystem scale. So kind of ecosystem integrated approaches. How do plants as communities or in individual niches with access to different water reserves and different plant water use strategies, how do they respond, and how would that influence maybe be different for regional or global processes compared to individual plants? So kind of bridging the scale gap is what we'd like to do. And partitioning water fluxes is difficult because they're all driven by the same processes. It's the same basic process of evaporation, just different access to water reserves or different modulation by plants. But there have been some really good methods that have come out. So probably the gold standard is at the moment is SAPFlow, in no small part due to the efforts from Rafa and his team in aggregating these data sets and making something that can be utilized on a broader scale. So that's really what we'd like to have as far as an integrated signal at lots of different ecosystems. But apart from SAPFlow, I would say one of the next most popular methods is above and below canopy measurements. So this is, taking a measurement up above the canopy and below, and using that to separate what is maybe a more transpiration dominated flux from the top to a less transpiration dominated flux at the bottom. Of course, SAPFlow and the above and below ground methods both suffer from the fact that understory transpiration is not really accounted for, but it's at least getting this biological signal. And I don't think that this has been aggregated to the point like they've done in SAPFluxNet. I think people have talked about it, but I think that would be a really good initiative. Another popular method would be isotopes. So this is something that's really developed in the last years with a lot of exciting opportunities. So differentiating the signal from water sources going through the plant and the water sources that are not going through the plant based on isotopic signatures. And there's these integrated methods, but also even methods associated with eddy covariance to get very temporally explicit signals. So there's a lot of exciting stuff coming up with that. And I don't have a lot of time to go into details with it, but there's these methods and many others. And I think really the important thing when you're looking at ecosystem water fluxes is that there's no silver bullet. Every ecosystem has to take a slightly different approach. Every ecosystem has to really look at where can things be identified, and these kind of in-depth studies really inform our understanding of how ecosystems use water, and they're very powerful. Kind of a step above or a step past that would be eddy covariance partitioning. If you're not so familiar with this would be doing basically what's been done with the carbon fluxes, separating NEE to gross primary productivity and ecosystem respiration, but doing that for the water flux to the abiotic and biotic water fluxes. And the real advantage here is that we already have the historical data set that we could apply it to. So if you have a method for partitioning the water flux, you can really already utilize a broad spatial temporal data set. And there are, in the last 5 years, a lot of methods that have come out. I can't go through all of them. I think they all have really some unique advantages and disadvantages. None of them are going to be as good as the in-depth studies with supplemental measurements, but they do allow access to the greater historical data set. And you can use multiple methods. So you can really use multiple methods. And if you've got if you've got supplemental data, you can put your study in perspective if you have eddy covariance data as well, with hundreds of other sites across the world based on one of these eddy covariance partitioning methods. And the code is out there. Please use it if you have any questions. I know all of these authors would be happy to answer questions. I'm happy to answer questions, but really feedback of what's working, what's not working, and utilization of these, I think would be really cool from the community.
So 1 minute left, Jake.
Okay, so given that we have these ecosystem scale estimates, we'd really like to then even take it a step further and directly relate these ecosystem measurements, which can be paired with remote sensing data in particular, to directly get data-driven observations and predictions of regional and global fluxes. So here, just a couple examples. Here's a study from Sean et al., where they made an estimate of transpiration from SIF data, so sun-induced fluorescence, This was SIF data taken at the tower and compared to the transpiration using the partitioning method from the tower. And you get pretty good agreement with the powerful thing that you could use spaceborne estimates of SIF to apply this model for global estimates of transpiration. Also, kind of direct pairing of machine learning with the in situ observations and satellite cutouts around the towers and meteorological data. So this FluxCom approach, it's been applied to the carbon and energy fluxes, and we can apply it to the water fluxes as well. So I think those are really some exciting opportunities. And if you haven't heard, there's going to be a workshop this coming November, and tomorrow we'll have a breakout discussion to really set the agenda of what are the challenges, not just with water flux partitioning, but water flux measurements in general. So please come by tomorrow at 9:45. And thank you.